The US election is just weeks away. The race is getting more intense. Now, these elections are incredibly important. This time it seems just about anything can happen. US Vice President Mike Pence and Democratic nominee Kamala Harris had a debate in Salt Lake City. And while even a fly tried to get some attention, it just couldn't be taken away from Donald Trump. Let's discuss the debate with our US correspondent, Jagruti Dave. Very good morning to you. I've heard that it was more sort of dodgeball than hardball when it came to this debate, that not much was gleaned from either of them.
Yes, I mean, it was a very different affair to the first presidential debate that we saw between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I mean, that was chaotic, acrimonious. Insults were being hurled between candidates. Here, nonetheless, there were clashes, maybe not as fierce and chaotic as the ones we saw last week, but there were clashes, and most pointedly really over the coronavirus pandemic, with Kamala Harris slamming the Trump administration, saying that it was their handling of the pandemic was the greatest failure of any presidential administration, and Mike Pence really having to go on the defensive and say that Donald Trump was thinking put the health of the American people first, and he pivoted to blaming China for the pandemic, a strategy that the Trump administration has used frequently when they're talking about their record in the pandemic.
And obviously this time, the vice president's a lot more important, considering that Kamala is a woman of color. She could be the first in the White House. Did issues surrounding her come up about that?
Yes, this was a historic moment, I think, in terms of we talk about the differences between this debate and the presidential debate. You know, the other really important differences, whilst that was a debate between two white men in their 70s, this was a historic moment with Kamala Harris as the first black woman to be nominated for the vice presidential ticket, or, you know, for a major party, the first woman of South Asian descent as well. And that was very important, clearly, when the debate around race came up. The question was asked about whether Breonna Taylor had received justice, and you know, Kamala Harris really could draw on her background when she talks about the peaceful protests, the demands for racial justice, and that is clearly something the Democrats see as a point of strength for her as a candidate. Mike Pence, like Donald Trump, has pivoted towards talking of law and order. He did say that he felt for the family of Breonna Taylor, but he said that he had faith in the American justice system. And so that is once again that difference between the Republicans and the Democrats on this issue, at least between President Trump and Joe Biden, Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. When they're talking about race, there's one side pushing that point of law and order, and Joe Biden, Kamala Harris talking about, you know, accepting that they were willing to consider police reforms, for example. It wasn't sort of quite as aggressive as the attacks on Joe Biden have been, but nonetheless, you know, that was a point. And also something that was mentioned on social media a lot is how women are presented, and especially how black women are perceived. And, you know, lots of people saying that they had to be, that, you know, Kamala Harris has to play that tightrope that many women do, and particularly more so for women of colour, where they have to be likeable, but they have to not come across as aggressive as well. And this is something that commentators were saying that they had to be conscious of when they were talking about how the two candidates performed. So, yes, there were lots of challenges there and lots of issues specifically surrounding Kamala Harris.
And Jagruti, I mean, everyone's talking about the fly, which was a little distracting, but the focus obviously on Donald Trump, and we've just got weeks to go now until the elections in November. It's going to be interesting times. Also, everyone keeping a focus on Donald Trump's status when it comes to COVID-19. Thanks.